Abraham Lincoln is quoted as saying, quote, "If we could first know where we are and whither we are tending, we could better judge what to do and how to do it," unquote. That is the core message of how we begin our exploration of the future, according to Edward Cornish, author of Futuring, to find out what is happening now and what has lasting importance. In other words, what elements of the past will be with us for some time in the future? Or what trends should we be looking at to guide our choices for moving forward? In this segment, we will look at some of the techniques commonly used for anticipating and forecasting future events. As Edward Cornish writes, quote, "These methods are rational, empirical, and scientific. They are mostly refinements of the common sense techniques that people use in everyday life," unquote. Yet used in combinations, they provide the foundation for us to make decisions on how we might best think of and prepare for our future success, whether in industry, education, or government. The first tool is scanning. Scanning is typically a systematic survey of newspapers, websites, and other publications and media for interactions or changes likely to be important in the future. Scanning focuses mainly on trends, changes that occur through time rather than individual events. Generally, the purpose is to identify changes that are happening and that are happening outside the group doing the scanning. For example, let's say you manufacture toys. A group outside manufacturing is scanning the media and finds a lot of information that could affect manufacturers like you. They provide you with their findings. One of the greatest values of scanning is to recognize the importance of ideas that initiate a change. A second tool is a trend. How one looks at or manages trends can vary. Trends can be classified so that we can look at them more systematically. For example, the category suggested by Philip Kotler of Northwestern University in his book Marketing Management is widely used by business today. His 6 broad categories are demography, economy, government, environment, society, and technology. By classifying trends, we can look at individual groupings of trends as well as the relationships between the categories. For example, in the group of trends included in the demography category, there might be a trend in population migration of a specific age group that could have a significant impact on the workforce, a trend in the economy category. Generally, we analyze trends, monitor trends, and project trends. Trend analysis examines the nature, causes, speed of development, and potential impacts of a trend. Careful analysis may be needed because a trend can have many different impacts, and many of those consequences may not be apparent at first. Careful trend analysis looks at both the causes and the consequences. For example, a current trend is life expectancy is rising. This trend may be the result of rising living standards, which include better health care, more nutritious food, better medical knowledge and services, more effective drugs, and many other items. The consequences may be people spend more time in retirement, or more people will require disability care. More housing is needed for the elderly. A greater burden on the younger people to support the elderly. Fewer children in the population. more elderly people who can contribute to the economy and society through paid and volunteer labor. We are all familiar with monitoring results in our organizations, generally trend charts showing where we have been. We use this information regularly to check the pulse of the business, monitor progress, and make key decisions about our next moves. These trends can also be used to identify impacts and warnings of challenges ahead. For example, a rapidly rising unemployment rate or the appearance of a deadly disease like the bird flu may have significant consequences on the many different aspects of our businesses. Through extrapolation of the data, we can project trends. When numerical data are available, a trend can be plotted on graph paper to show changes through time. The futurist can then extend the trend or project it into the future on the basis of the recent rate of change. Such a projection shows where the trend should be at some point in the future. For example, a population with a steady 2% rate of annual growth will double in about 35 years. The caution is, however, the projection assumes there is no shift in the rate of change. We must recognize that projections should be used to give us directional indicators, not absolutes. By looking at related variables or assumptions that might impact the projected direction, we can plot ranges of the direction that the projection might take. That same population trend may be significantly impacted by the variable that no additional land is available for housing expansion beyond 8 years. Trends offer us an excellent way to begin exploring the future. They anchor our thinking in what has occurred in the past and is occurring in the present. They provide a conceptual structure within which we can think about our future. If we know how our current reality is shifting, we know where to anchor our messages for others to engage in achieving the change. Another very valuable tool is scenario development and analysis. In another ITC video conference program, available as a webcast in the ITC online video library at www.itc-genet.org, Dr. David Chaudhran provided an excellent presentation on scenarios. I recommend you review that presentation when you are undertaking development scenarios. So I will only briefly discuss scenarios here. Humans have used scenarios for many centuries. Through developing scenarios intuitively, humans were able to creatively find ways to survive. For example, escape the marauding lions, or figure out ways to kill gazelles who could run much faster than they could, or build shelters, etc. As our worlds have become more complex, the scenario tool is even more important for understanding our future, as well as its requirement for frequency of use. Simply stated, scenarios are attempts to imagine future possibilities on the basis of what we know or think we know. We all explore future possibilities through our imagination. For example, we might use a scenario to plan a vacation. We try to imagine what would it be like on this particular beach in Rio versus that particular beach in Barbados. What good things or bad things might happen if we choose this location versus that location. Scenarios are useful in helping us understand the benefits and the consequences of our choices or decisions. The best way to articulate a scenario is to employ a story. Stories are filled with images and details that capture the minds and imaginations of others. The stories translate trend data, ideas, etc., into realistic-like events. Typically, each scenario tells a separate story. Each story describes a possible experience of the future. Each future is uncertain. Because of those characteristics, scenarios are particularly useful in futuring. Typically, you should use several scenarios so that you can choose the story that most likely will occur and use that story to understand what steps you need to take to create that future. Another futuring tool is polling, simply consulting others. As the adage goes, 2 heads are better than 1. So we seek out experts or others for their opinions on what they believe the future may look like. The key is to ask. There are multiple ways to ask. For example, have face-to-face conversations, telephone interviews, or send out questionnaires. All of these can be used in combination to gather information that can form the basis of a composite view that heretofore had not been imagined. One of the tools we use with our clients to help understand the future is modeling. A model can help us understand the relationships of the elements and create views of what something might look like. For example, what a future development might look like in 10 years from now with vivid details. Simulations can also be used to help us make a choice about the future. Frequently, this tool is used by the military to understand the outcomes of their strategic choices. Frequently, business gathers small teams to simulate outcomes of varying choices. The value is in understanding the possible, if not probable, value or benefit or contribution of one's choices. Also, there is the added value of seeing it play out before your eyes, allowing you to see relationships or influences that were not even considered. A natural extension of a simulation is conducting it as a game. Again, the military uses this method to test all aspects of their strategy and implementation. Businesses may not have the opportunity nor resources to conduct such experiences, but there are groups that specialize in designing and conducting those types of experiences for people to test their theories. Additionally, for the more complex systems, one can use computer simulations. Because of the capability of computers to consider wide ranges of data and complex relationships, this tool can help understand the numerous consequences that may occur should we undertake a particular course of action. Typically, computer simulations provide quick answers to multiple what-if questions and can lead us to insights that we may not have even recognized as related. Historical analysis is another tool favored by futurists. By studying historical events, a current situation can be compared to one or more situations in history that seem to be similar and may help anticipate the outcome of the current event. An example referred to in the press last week in London was a review of the historical context and events that led to the current strained relations between the United States government and Cuba, and how strikingly familiar they are to the context, events, and political sensitivities between Venezuela and the U.S. today. Another frequently used tool is brainstorming. Brainstorming is useful in identifying possibilities, opportunities, and risks. Through the generation of new ideas by small groups assembled to think creatively about a topic, such as a problem to be solved, an opportunity to capture, or a direction to take an organization, one can discover creative ways to move forward. While groups are instructed to withhold judgment on ideas, unconsciously they may be using a practicality filter when putting ideas out. It is recommended you should request participants to contribute all ideas, regardless of how far-fetched or bizarre they may seem. A tool that I have become more of an advocate of is mind mapping. There are several very good software packages on the market that can be used to quickly generate ideas and then arrange, rearrange quickly to organize for understanding. Finally, the granddaddy futuring tool is visioning. The tool is powerful because of the engagement required by many people within an organization. Visions start with a review of the past, the current situation, and then move on to defining desirable future states. But it is by involving people at all levels of the business that gives the process strength and outcome, depth and traction. By together creating the image of the future, most people can connect sensually to the vision. This emotional connection creates the energy and engages the minds and hearts of those in the organization to pursue the vision. There are various other ITC video conferences also available at www.itc-gnet.org that detail how to develop and implement a vision. So I will not elaborate more on this important concept. So as you can see, there are multiple tools available to us to use as we attempt to prepare and define our future. Some of the tools we use every day performing other tasks in our business, academic, or government lives. Some are tools that we may not tend to use regularly. Yet each is valuable in its simplicity and powerful when combined to address more complexity. All the tools will not help unless one is committed to understanding the role that mindset plays in how we interpret the data. This can range from an individual's personality preference to one adopted by an entire organization. For example, in the personality works of David Kiersey, he defines 4 types of temperaments, one of which he describes as a guardian. The guardian temperament tends to link everything to history, arranges everything neatly in order, prefers traditional approaches, and tends not to embrace change. Unconsciously, the future is an area that tends to be avoided since it is unknown. Organizations can also evolve to adopt a guardian-type personality. Tradition is celebrated. Keeping business activities status quo is prized. Forward movement is measured in days, not years. If an organization is to capitalize on using the tools available for determining its future, the participants and organization must be open to exploring the unknown and consciously recognize the tendencies pulling them to look back for answers versus ahead. I am not saying that a guardian-type person or organization is bad. Rather, one needs to be aware since the preference is unconsciously pulling away from the future. In another ITC video conference, I spoke about adopting a mindset that is global. You might recall that a global mindset is similar to that of an effective leader. To do so requires diligence in developing skills that move away from those associated with a traditional manager. One needs to build competencies that can be leveraged for developing a future in a global context. While I mention a few of them, just check to see where you personally might stand with reference to developing those competencies. Are you developing systems thinking habits that will drive you to think of a broader, bigger picture? Are you building mind matrices to balance contradictory demands and needs? Are you creating networks across organizational boundaries to establish trusted networks versus hierarchical relationships? Are you applying cross-cultural conflict management and negotiation skills to learn to value multicultural teamwork and diversity? Are you sharing critical learning with others to expand knowledge and skills of the whole organization on an ongoing basis? Are you looking at change as an opportunity to discover? Are you willing to be open to a surprise where you might find the next big thing for your company? If you systematically work at responding to each of those questions, your efforts will lead you to opening your mind to the future, to a global future. To help, once again, there is a simple tool that we can use frequently that can begin to affect mindset changes in the organization. That tool is recognition. Each of us has a need to be recognized for our contribution. Responding to that need, some organizations have chosen to facilitate changing the focus from the past to the future by recognizing those who have dared to present ideas that move the thinking of the organization forward. The rewards tend not to be monetary, since those rewards have little motivational value. Rather, peer recognition is the driver. We use all the tools listed above regularly for operating our business, especially when we envision and strategize our future. There is no magic, just hard work. And when all the analysis is complete, the future articulated, there is one final tool, one final test. What is your intuition telling you about the future you have just defined? The question, does it feel right? If so, just do it. In closing, I'm reminded of Edward Cornish's admonition. The first rule in anticipating future events is this, quote, "We must do it as best we can and keep trying even though we cannot do it very well," unquote.